Hello and welcome to the CAS Virtual Showcase 2021 and this session by Neil Rickus on resources and guidance to support primary computing leads. My name is Wendy Piccinini and I am the CAS Outreach Manager for communities in London and the East of England, and I'm your host for this session. We're also joined by my colleague Sarah Zaman, who is also a CAS Outreach Manager for the Northwest and who is the moderator and will be monitoring the question window. Shortly, I will introduce the presenter, but just before I do, I have a couple of things to share. In terms of housekeeping, during the session, please use the question window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions. The top of the window has an orange rectangle which can be expanded or collapsed. Sarah will be making a note of questions and these will be answered if time allows at the end. If time does not allow, responses will be posted on the CAS forum and across CAS social media channels. The hashtag for our event is hashtag CASVirtual21, so please remember to tweet. And as a reminder, all attendees are in listen-only mode. So let me introduce our speaker. Neil is a senior lecturer in computing education at the University of Hertfordshire and a computing tutor on the primary PGCE course at Brunel University. Neil also undertakes work independently and is a primary education specialist for the BCS and an NCCE resource developer. I know he's very excited to be delivering this session at the CAS Virtual Showcase 2021. So over to you, Neil.
Brilliant, thank you, Wendy, and thanks very much for having me. Apologies for the barn behind me. I've been delivering some CPD in a very spacious building today. So this afternoon we're going to be talking all about resources and guidance to support you as computing leads, and during the next half an hour or so we'll talk briefly about some of the challenges of actually leading computing in primary schools. We'll then look at how, by focusing on the curriculum, that might give us an initial starting point for making the subject perhaps taught in a more efficient manner. And then we'll look at recording some evidence, what guidance is out there already, and then I'll be sharing a resource that we've been developing with the community here at CAS to help with your development of the subject. So we're going to set the scene and think about perhaps why leading computing in primary schools might be a little bit challenging at times. To get your thoughts on this, I've got a lovely Padlet wall which can be found at the link on the screen at the minute, or if you want to click on a link in the to get to it, I've just popped that in the chat for you. And when you get there, you should see a lovely Simpsons themed background. For those of you that haven't used Padlet before, it's an online post-it note wall, so you can either double click on it or you can press the plus symbol in the bottom right hand corner, and everyone else will then be able to see your responses. So what I'm looking for over the next few minutes is, why can it be challenging to lead computing in a primary school? And I can see a few of you already posting on there, which is great. Okay, so a few of us already have mentioned technology issues and perhaps the joys or not of tech support, and linked to that there's the expectation that you understand how to fix everything in the school if it's got a plug. If there's issues that you notice that you agree with, there are little thumbs up symbols that you can use as well. Do feel free to move your little box around if need be as well. Another one that's related to the tech support, you're expected to be able to just leave your class, go and help whichever colleague it is that needs their projector fixing or whatever it is, and then we're starting to think a bit more about the subject itself. Actually, the limited subject knowledge that the staff often have, or perhaps they have the subject knowledge but not the confidence to teach it, can be a real difficulty as well. And finally, picking up on a couple of other bits, we've got the actually evidencing how the children are getting on, showing that progression, and perhaps tracking it over time can be a real challenge as well, and actually getting the time in there to put in some cross-curricular links in order to ensure that there's actually time within the curriculum as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I'm not sure if I've given you a little bit more time to look at this, I'm sure you would come up with even more reasons why this can be difficult. So hopefully we're going to try and address some of these things over the next half hour or so. So the big two for me, which certainly the big two that have come out of your thoughts here, are the delivery of computing as a curriculum subject versus technology usage. And often computing is put in the same pot as technology enhanced learning. So because, say, Google Docs or Google Classroom or Teams works through using a computer, suddenly you're seen as being responsible for that, whereas actually it's a way to deliver learning, perhaps a bit like maybe bad analogy, but a bookcase or the whiteboard pens. And actually teachers tend to manage those things on their own, and if they need support, there's someone whose specific job that is to fix those things and to get those things, rather than a subject lead. Also online safety, and obviously there is some crossover with the computing curriculum there, but that very much needs a whole school approach. And also the IT resources within school, the expectation that perhaps you hold the budget for them, that you're able to fix them, you're able to get some technical support at the drop of a hat. And I have even seen parents come in that they know that you know about computers because you're the compute coordinator. You maybe send home the odd email and, oh, can you actually help me install this app or get rid of this thing that Johnny's been looking at when I gave him my phone to babysit him, and everything in between. So all of these bits sort of come up when you become computing lead. The other bit that is a challenge is this lack of staff subject knowledge and confidence, and that can go all the way from the teaching assistant that is perhaps trying to support you within the lesson, all the way to the senior leadership team and the governors. Now, one of the perhaps few good things that's come out of the recent pandemic has been that it's really shown us the importance of digital literacy skills and the need for these to be developed in school. And I've seen on social media quite a bit over the past few weeks that as schools are starting to think a bit more about going back to a normal curriculum, that the lessons involving computing and how to use these devices effectively are being dropped. And perhaps this is actually the wake-up call we need, that pupils and indeed our teachers need to be able to use this stuff effectively. And Kat Lamin, who's heavily involved with CAS, has just written a really nice blog post about this exact issue. So if you are having to perhaps have discussions with members of staff or your senior leadership team about why this is important, there's lots of very good arguments in that blog post to look at. So what can we do about this stuff? Well, a good starting point is to think about the curriculum content itself, and as I'm sure you're aware, Ofsted's view of this often relates to the intent, the implementation, and the impact. I'm not going to go through each of those. I imagine you're familiar with them, but one thing we can do, and there's a resource that's been developed very much with computing in mind, is self-evaluate where we are with each of those areas. And there's a short link on the slide for you there, but I've also put the link to get you there in the chat as well. And within it allows you to think about everything from how ambitious your curriculum is, how well it's planned, through to examining the subject knowledge of staff and whether perhaps you're using assessment materials appropriately, whether children are able to actually access the subject, whether your children with special educational needs can access lessons, and so on and so forth. So it's a very good way to actually think, where are we at the minute, and to start getting some planning in place, particularly if perhaps you are starting to have a bit of resistance about why delivering computing in your school is important. So related to this is cultural capital, and I've seen a few times recently that when schools are thinking about this impact implementation, that this cultural capital thing comes up, but it's maybe not always quite clear how it might fit in with computing. So what I'd like you to put in the question section is, how might we develop this cultural capital, this essential knowledge that pupils need to be good educated citizens of the world, and in order to appreciate the creativity in this subject? How might we show this? And perhaps that's a way that it can be used to enrich our curriculum content as well. So you put your thoughts in the questions box, that would be great. Give you a minute or so to do that.
We've got an answer there.
Brilliant, thank
Neil,
you.
allow them to develop skills to use technology responsibly and effectively to achieve a purpose.
Really nice, thank you, Jenny. And yeah, we've got some good educational theory in there as well, that if children have got a reason for doing their work, they're much more likely to produce better stuff if there's an audience for it. And also you've got that sort of engagement, that there's actually a reason we're using computing here. Were there any others, Sarah, as well?
Yeah, so need to use technology to interact with the government increasingly.
Nice, we've got a very practical need there as well, thank you. Brilliant. Okay, so thanks. Sorry,
we do have a couple more. So we've got engage in lessons and resources that show children how to use computing in real life situations, giving them additional experience through technology which they otherwise may not have experienced, so AR and VR, exploring other places. We've got loads. I'll just do a couple more. Understand the role technology plays in our society, how algorithms affect our lives, and just it's absolutely essential for children to have a strong technological awareness to be a proactive member of the workforce of the future.
That's great. Thank you for your responses there. Really nice. And I think I can just about summarize them into these three bits. So we think about the people that have sort of influenced computing. I've got a few examples here. Lovelace, Turing, Hopper, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, but ideally these relate to people that are from perhaps similar backgrounds to the children we teach, or can certainly be role models, and they don't always have to be white middle-class bold males like myself, for example. And with regards to the actual tech, you've thought about how it might improve our lives, how it might actually disrupt and change things, possibly for the better, but also that it's maybe even going to have a negative impact and isn't always a good thing. And that might be actually how we communicate, or it could be the world of work and everything in between. And then we've got all our additional opportunities. And again, you've alluded to a few of these in your questions, but it might be providing extracurricular activities, going on virtual or in-person museum trips. And you may have seen that there are Alan O'Donoghue, who's a techno teacher on Twitter, often posts on the various primary computing Facebook groups, run lots of good virtual visits, and also got lots of nice ideas if that's something that you want to investigate with regards to computing. And then also entering events and competitions. For example, the PA consulting competition is a nice one, and there's often lots that are advertised on the CAS community site as well. And then finally, actually getting people in or having Zoom chats to enrich the curriculum too. So hopefully by doing this kind of stuff, that will, as well as giving children a really rich experience in computing, it will help promote the subject in school, and combined with perhaps looking at different bits of the curriculum through that audit of the intent, implementation and impact would be a really good place to start. And often the thing that's going to be in the back of your mind is obviously they come in and what might they be looking for. And something that's on the CAS site related to this is a number of questions for subject leads, which might be useful. There's certainly not an exhaustive list, but it may give you a few things to think about, to reflect on, to consider about, actually, do I know this about my subject? And if not, how might I develop it further? Also at that link is a way for you to actually record evidence as well. And there might be within that a need to actually think about getting your subject leader folders together, whether that be on paper or virtually, with computing as got a big drive towards having e-portfolios of pupils' work, particularly some of these endpoints, for example. We've got listed there a possible structure of stuff that will show actually you've got a really sort of vast array of things that will enable you to deliver this stuff effectively. So we've got that list of stuff that might potentially be in a subject leader folder. Is there anything missing there that you think might enable you to show how well you're delivering this subject? And this development plan bit, that can also be found at the link I've just put in the chat as well. So is there anything there that's perhaps missing, or maybe you're not clear on what it might involve? Do feel free to put that in the questions. And with regards to the budget, this is often one of the more challenging ones, because there are, obviously, in order to deliver computing, you rely on technology quite heavily, which might be budgeted as a school. So it can be really useful if you're involved with those decisions with the senior leadership within your school.
Can I just, there's a question in here. Jenny's put, she's new to leading computing. Would Seesaw, the app, count as a suitable portfolio?
I think, yes, a really nice app to use. If you can show perhaps that, actually, yeah, this is maybe, rather than just bump, here is all the children's work, it might be that this is what we expect from a child at the end of year 4, or this is an example of a typical child's work in year 3. But using that to record stuff sounds really nice, particularly if you can give people access.
And Rachel's put, what about photographic evidence as well?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that would, in the sort of examples of pupils' work, that would be really nice. But also showing, if say you've got you might have a medium-term plan in there, and perhaps you say that we've done all these things. Actually, by having the photographic evidence, that shows that it's actually gone on in the classroom, rather than you just being able to talk nicely to someone and show them that you know your stuff. So I mentioned development plans. So there's an example at the link I just popped in the chat, and it's really nice if that can actually show how the subject has developed over time as well. So someone going into school can see, all right, they know that perhaps they need to make improvements, but actually what have they done recently as well? So it's not just seen as a, oh yeah, we're going to buy something flashy and see if it works. Actually, you've evaluated it over time, you've seen what its impact has been, you've looked at the needs of the staff and so on and so forth. Now, there are some courses out there that will allow you to develop your understanding of leading in the primary school. One such one is the National Centre's Leading Primary Computing. This is a live course that is both delivered face-to-face and remotely. Again, I'll put the link in the chat for you there. And it's delivered over 10 hours. That doesn't need to be a 10-hour slog of a day. For example, I'm doing one that starts on the 5th of July. We're doing an afternoon of content and then 2 twilights over the next couple of weeks. And it can also be used for the Teach Computing Primary Certificate as well, which is in evidence that you're able to lead this thing effectively. And you'll notice that the third part, the progress and assessment of computing, is really useful for you actually being able to evidence what the children can do. It's a really nice course, and so in fact you can get the certificate through the National Centre. Again, gives you a bit of extra accreditation. And there's a few organisations that often offer paid for resources that have got free resources in order to lead the subject. So Capel's got one, as you put in the chat. Too Simple has got one, and also Computing Schools has got one for school leaders. And the school leaders one is really good if you're one of those people who at the start are perhaps having that argument or clash, perhaps, that actually I'm not responsible for everything with a plug. I really want to get children able to use a computer effectively, and actually I want them to produce some really engaging work rather than actually having to run around the school every half an hour trying to fix the whiteboards. There's also lots of general subject leadership guidance out there from lots of professional organisations. But is there anything else that perhaps you have used that you found really useful? And just noticed in there, someone's also said about providing evidence about downloading work from Microbit Classroom is really nice as well. So again, you've got lots of evidence there to show potentially. So thank you, Adrian, for sharing that. So any other guidance that you found particularly useful in leading this subject? There's just a few other bits.
Yeah, I know that you can read the questions anyway, Neil, but nothing in
yeah, I just noticed I could. That's great.
Yeah, it's great. You don't need me. So I'm supporting. Caroline says it's been really useful to speak with others in the subject through social media. I'm sure that maybe you're in the Facebook primary coordinator group, Caroline, but I think I'm just contributing here, but I think that's really supportive to people. And Sarah said, yes, just going back, uses scrapbooks and photos for evidence, adds extracts from medium-term plans to show what the children were learning.
Nice, thank you. And I think the Facebook primary leaders group in particular is really nice. As I use that and Twitter, and I think with the Facebook one, you very much get sort of from a real normal teacher their experience of leading this, rather than perhaps something that maybe in theory or the research says works, but in practice is actually quite difficult. And obviously we've got good old CAS as well, which we do try and support. You can if you can go to community meetings and post on the forum, that can be a good thing. And often there's subject leader meetings as well that can be really useful that organisations in your area might run. So there's lots out there, but something we've recognised at CAS is that we've got a vast range of expertise in the community for leading this subject, but perhaps it hasn't been collated maybe that succinctly. So something that we've developed over the past few months is a primary subject leaders toolkit, and very much asking members of the community to share what they do, and also to actually put together some case studies to see what this looks like in practice. So from probably September, all being well, the resource will be available to you through CAS, and there will be a number of audit questions very much focused on computing rather than generic guidance. I'll show you an example in a minute. There'll be a big chunk of generic guidance on how you might actually develop that area. So rather than you saying, actually, we're not doing that very well, and then so what, you can go to that relevant section and see, right, that might be a good next stage to look at, or that might be a really good resource. And also linked to that, there'll be some case studies which will enable you to see how someone currently in the classroom, or very recently in the classroom, has actually done it. And the 9 areas we've looked at, I can count 2, 4, 6, 9 areas we looked at outlined on the right there. So it's everything from general leadership stuff to that resourcing, how you might work with your staff and your leadership team to make sure that actually the need to have computing equipment is planned and budgeted for, and actually when the iPads are knackered in 4 years, that there's going to be money to get new ones, for example. And then all the way through to engaging family members, other members of the community, perhaps getting people from other organisations in to support, and other subjects such as online safety. Now, the content is written. We're just in the process of getting it to look nice. So the bits I'll share with you aren't in the final how they look for, but have to give you an idea of what might be in there. So, for example, the questions around enrichment that you might consider could be that actually if children go beyond the national curriculum, and have they got opportunities to perhaps do stuff outside of lessons. And we've also provided different ways that sort of examples of how this might actually be completed as well, and the sort of evidence you might look for. And then with regards to the guidance, again, I'm conscious this isn't made to look beautiful at the minute, but you've got again, for enrichment, perhaps various competitions they might go on, suitable visitors you might get in, and various local initiatives, and then case studies from at least 2 teachers from each area as well, outlining how they've approached this. So for enrichment here, we've got Caroline Moore, who's at Woodbridge Primary School in Suffolk, and she discusses how she's used, say, the Bedbrough competition, also the Oxford University Computer Challenge to engage her pupils, and how the Co-Club resources have been really useful for actually developing the stuff in her school too. So that's coming, and I've given you a number of resources to look at this point. What might therefore be your next step to perhaps develop this stuff further in your school? What one thing might you be able to do perhaps over the next month or so before we break up for the summer? Perhaps again in the questions, if you could, that would be great. Or one thing you're perhaps going to take away.
I'm just going to share some of the questions with you, Neil.
Brilliant, thank you.
So, well, not so much questions, but Rachel's just saying she's loving these links and the look of the new CAS resources. Jenny's going to go away and do an audit and check priorities for a development plan. We've got Steve's going to add some lessons about cultural capital in computing. Rachel's going to do, yeah, she's just said that the intent, implementation and impact audit document will be really useful.
Thank you. And I think Steve, with the cultural capital stuff, sometimes it might just be a 5 minutes, perhaps start of a day type thing. For example, I had the Turing £50 note, I think it was released yesterday, and that might be a way in to open up discussion. And depending on the age and sensitivity of your pupils, might even be things about how you identify yourself as an individual, for example, and there'll be lots of ways to bring this stuff in. And I think stories where organizations are hacked often is an interesting way to look at how this stuff actually impacts us in society as well. So we're just about done. We have got time for any final questions if need be. Thanks, Adrian, for sharing that you're looking forward to it as well. If there aren't any further bits, we will wrap. Oh, I think there are a couple more questions coming in.
Would you like me to read it out?
Yeah, I'll leave you to that one, Sarah. If you could, actually, you might be better to answer that one for me, Sarah.
Oh, thanks for putting me on the spot there. So my school, yeah, I'm just saying who it is. My school follows pretty much all the units from the NCCE planning. Would you say the online safety side of the curriculum is all included, or would you say we would need extra online safety lessons? I can chip in if you'd like me to, Neil.
Yeah, I saw a very nice post on the Facebook community group from you, I think yesterday perhaps, about this. So.
Yeah, so the NCC units do touch on Project Evolve resources, which obviously link to the Education for a Connected World document. Yeah, I would add in extra online safety, not so much units, doesn't have to be units, but just activities in there. They can slot into quite a few of the Teach Computing units. If you're using the Project Evolve, there's things on copyright, particularly like the things on health and well-being using technology. So I would say that, yeah, have a look at Project Evolve or Be Internet Legends, pick out topics that you think would be relevant for what you're doing at the time in your computing lessons or in cross-curricular lessons, really, and add them in. That would be my advice.
Yeah, thank you. And a few other bits that I stick in the chat. Beth has got some nice cybersecurity lessons, which are there, and also there's a gentleman on the CAS resources site, which if I talk around me finding the link for you, has actually gone to the trouble of putting the Project Evolve resources into a sort of coherent scheme of work. Obviously, it's only one person's interpretation of that, but it was interesting to see how they'd approached it. I'll pop that link in the chat as well. So it goes from year 1 up to year 6. And yeah, the people that have tried that have found that really useful. Cool. So I think, Wendy, we're just about there. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Thank you, Sarah, for facilitating those, and Wendy for hosting. And yeah, best luck, and look forward to sharing the resource once it's all published and made to look really nice.
Can I say thank you to Neil and to Sarah, and thanks, Neil, for mentioning the Barefoot Cyber resources, because that introduces nicely what I was going to say next, which is that tomorrow the CAS Virtual Showcase returns with 2 sessions. There is one on EU Code Week, which is at noon, and then from 1:30, we'll be joining Dr. Chips at his school for a barefoot live session on the cybersecurity, so him and his pupils. So do join us for that if you're able to. At the end of this webinar, a short survey will appear on the screen, and we'd be grateful if you could take a minute to complete it. A recording of this webinar will also be available on the CAS YouTube channel after the session. And just to say that we hope to see you at other sessions in this summer showcase. Please do continue to spread the word about computing at school. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we hope you have a lovely evening. Thank you and goodbye.
Sure, thank you.